failures. I've created, after Electronic Arts went public and I left it, I've created 4 or 5 other companies. And I've worked with many, many companies who were in the startup phase, particularly companies from UC Berkeley when I started the Skydeck accelerator for UC Berkeley back in 2012. And I've sit on boards of companies, so I've seen successes and failures. I've had failures too. And I think that among the most important lessons I've learned, maybe the top one is that when you start a company, when you get involved in a company at the beginning, you need to believe that everybody else that you're working with is the smartest, most talented, brilliant person you can possibly find to work with. You need to think that each other are resources. So it's something that a lot of people will decide to include their best friend or somebody they've known for a long time. But the best way to proceed in those cases is to find the person that you think is smarter than you are. And a lot of people have trouble doing that, but that's the best way. That's the best piece of advice I can give any group that's trying to start a company is make sure that you believe everyone else involved is the smartest talent you can find and should be smarter than you are. That's the first thing that I would say is a learning piece that I've acquired over the last 35 years. The second one, I think, is that you have to be true to yourself. And when you're starting a business, and be honest, and that's what I mean by true to yourself, you have to believe in what you're doing. And one of the hardest things to do when you're starting a company and you need to be able to gain revenues or add aspects of a company that or behave in a way that seem at the time in the short term to get you ahead, you really need to evaluate and decide whether that's the most trustworthy and honest way to behave. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing is that you remain true to your original goal, your original mission, and to honesty and the highest ethics possible. It's easy to forget that. A third item that I have felt like is one that's important is that people don't talk about this very much, but and in the back of people's minds when they start a company, there's always this looming thought that you will make a lot of money and it will make your life easier. And the fact of the matter is that's not always the case. Even making millions and millions of dollars doesn't necessarily make your life better or happier, doesn't necessarily solve your problems. And I think that most people don't fully understand that. And so my advice on that level is to put aside the ambition of becoming rich, but focus more on following your passion. That's what you should be focused on as you're starting a company. Not that you're going to be financially rewarded at the end of the process, even though if you follow your passion, that is the most likely thing that will happen, is that you will become wealthy. But wealth itself is not a solution to really anything. It's always impossible to go back in time, so it's almost pointless to talk about what you would do differently. You can't change the past. But to the extent that thinking about the past and what I might advise people to do as they're moving forward from this perspective of what I did in my past, I believe I would say that it's advisable to wait to get married until you've had some time to be by yourself, on your own, and learning about who you are for at least a 10-year period. I think I got married at age 22, and I think I would have been better advised to wait till I was 32 to get married, just because I think everybody needs to have a realistic appraisal of him or herself, and that needs to happen by yourself, not in a relationship with someone else. I think that's an important point that people often forget, and I think that especially if you're starting a company and you're in a relationship with someone, it can end up being very complicated. You need to focus all of your attention on what you're doing in building a company, and so I would say, from my standpoint, that's the thing I would have changed would have held off on having a family until I had spent at least a decade on my own. My favorite drink is San Pellegrino. In Italian, the brand is called Esse Pellegrino, and it is sparkling mineral water, and I like it with ice and just a splash of fresh grapefruit juice. It's the most refreshing drink I know. On the topic of drinks, champagne is, in the same regard, a very refreshing drink, and so I love champagne. It's got the sparkling aspect that I enjoy when I'm drinking something, and it's light and very refreshing too, not too heavy. So my preference in that regard is to have a glass of champagne. I love it. One of the phrases, or one of the quotes that I think has some meaning to me is something that is not terribly profound, but it was a quote that an author, a poet in the United States named Maya Angelou was quoted. She's now deceased. She was the poet laureate of the United States at one time, and she wrote a number of books and poems. Brilliant woman from the Deep South, I think Mississippi. And her quote that has some meaning for me is that she said, I've learned that people will forget what you said, and people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And it just, for me, rings so true. In our daily lives that are so busy and you meet so many people, you often forget who they are, much less what they did or said. But it's rare that you forget how they made you feel. And so I think that's an important learning in life. The other one that I think is a major importance is that it's important to give back. And that's a broad term, and it can be interpreted in a lot of ways. But what it means to me is that you need to reach a point in your life where you're willing to be generous with your time and your money and your effort, and give all of that or pieces of that to other people. If you have lived a decent life and succeeded, I think that it's part of your responsibility to help others do the same. And you can do that in many ways. You can invest in startup companies, other people's efforts. You can give advice to startup companies or actually any companies, but you can be an advisor. But just the concept of returning some of the benefits that you've gained over your lifetime is I think a responsibility and an important one, and one that people need to consciously decide that they're going to do. The future of technology is really hard to predict because the time frame is so loose right now. It seems to be getting shorter and shorter as technology increases and changes so fast. I've heard that a quote from someone, and I've heard it attributed to lots of people, that the best way to predict the future is to create it. But I would say that being able to predict how things will transpire with technology is a very difficult thing. The only thing you can guarantee is that the technology is going to continue to affect the way people live. My personal, there are so many aspects of technology that will make a difference in people's lives, whether it be in healthcare or quantum computing or even the internet, broadly speaking. I feel like for me, it's important to me to focus on a couple of areas in future technology that I think will make a big difference in people's lives. One of them is education. Educational institutions right now seem to be caught in a model that was valid maybe 200 years ago, but it was sort of like a factory at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. But education has not kept up with technology, and it's going to have to start responding better and utilizing technology better. So I think that's an area that needs very close attention in the future, and it will get it. It's starting to get it now in many regards. And one of the areas that I think will make an impact on education is that of virtual reality. I think that virtual reality, the experience of virtual reality, is something that is one of the most profoundly new experiences that I've had in my lifetime. Moving into the presence of a distinct reality from what you normally experience every day is just an amazing experience, and it's one that you never forget. When you have experiences in virtual reality, especially if they're learning experiences, and most everything in experience is a way of learning, you never forget what you learn in virtual reality. So the power of it is I think, profound. And I think that in the broadest sense of what can affect humanity, virtual reality is one of the technologies that's going to make a huge impact on education. And education is one of the most important things that we can possibly improve in the next few decades.